Good evening, I'm Aaron Malloy, and you're here for a very special edition of You Can't Say That on Edge Radio Australia. Very special guest. Been looking forward to this, I'll tell you right. And you've made us wait. Gee, built up the suspense, I'll tell you right now. Now, I was going to start tonight by reading your Wikipedia, what Wikipedia thinks of you. Okay. All right. Now, I got right into it here. Now, Kellie-Jay Keen, also known as Posy Parker, is a British anti-transgender rights activist. So I've read enough as far as I'm concerned. The end of the interview, I think. That's probably what we need to do. Wikipedia has decided that you're an evil person. I'm here to ask you a few more questions. Now, we've got the old divisive language there, the narrative there. Let's ask yourself. First and foremost, you lovely lady here, have I assumed your gender?
Well, I don't actually have one, but yes, I am a female. So that's my sex. That's your sex.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Wouldn't want to misgender you, of course. Now, that's important. Now, welcome, of course. It's really important that you're here because you're here for a very special event that's happening tomorrow, I believe, in front of Parliament House.
Yes.
What would that be?
It's called Let Women Speak. So it's Standing for Women, which is my organisation. And we started these events called Let Women Speak, which literally let women speak in the public square.
Okay, now I'm curious about this because women have always had a voice. I'm curious, why does a woman need a particular voice now? What's changed?
So a number of years ago, back 2015, I came across this issue, which was I was in a women-only online forum. Right. And there were lots of men calling themselves women on that forum. Okay. And if you raised a question, the response was vitriolic. It was like nothing I'd really experienced. Okay. And we'd gone through Brexit by that point, so it really was. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it really was insane. So I wanted to start talking about it, and the absolute kind of central point of this is the word woman, and anything that centres around that word, whether it's women's rights, whether it's language to describe our bodies. Those were the words that were beginning to be erased. Okay. So that's what we talk about.
Okay. So being erased, can you explain that a little further?
Yeah. So women may be referred to in sort of cervical cancer literature as people with cervixes, or.
But hang on, only women have a cervix.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because I went to school, we did biology. Is that correct? I'll just check people in the back of the room.
Well, unless you have one in a jar.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah, just checking. Yeah, okay. All right.
But yeah, so menstruators, because we menstruate, just all the words like that. But men still, they are not testicle havers. No. They are still men. Yeah. They're not prostate havers. They are still men.
It's a very good point.
So it really is just an attack on women, and women can't name what we are without being called something in relation to men, and that would normally be sort of transphobic. Okay.
Well, transphobic is a fear. Okay. Anything phobia is a fear. Yeah. Are you frightened of trans people?
In my space, probably am frightened of trans women, so-called trans women. So men in my space, but no, I think transgenderism is an ideology that is, as far as I'm concerned, a lie. Okay. And what it asks of other people is to join in. Yeah, okay. So basically participate in the play school, really. Okay. Yeah, simple as that. I mean, look, I'm going to say something straight off the bat how I feel about this. I agree there's actually three genders. I think there's male, there's female, and there's mental illness. Simple as that. That's how I see it. And I think that and that's not me having a go at people who have the illness, okay? I'm certainly not shaming them. But the reality is people who have an illness or something like that, they need our support and our help, not to be pandered to. And they certainly shouldn't be in a position of power to change the way people speak and the way people think. Yeah. I think that's quite kind because I actually don't think that fetish is a mental illness. So I do think there's a root of like dissociative disorders, which are through trauma or through homophobia, like internalized homophobia. But I think the majority of men in particular who think they're women, I really do think it's a fetish.
Okay. Look, you obviously went over to the US.
Yes.
And we had a particular swimmer over there, about 6'2", big broad shoulders. Yeah. quite a strong-looking woman. Sadly, that woman has a penis, right?
Yeah.
Now, that woman getting changed, and tongue is firmly in the cheek here.
Yes.
We're obviously on the same page on this, and I want to be as objective as I can, but when you've got in sports men competing as women, they've got superior muscle mass, all sorts of advantages there. To me, it's just the same as cheating. It's just the same as if you were taking an enhancing drug.
Yeah.
Because you are not allowing those women to exceed in their sport or whatever their vocation happens to be. Now, a lot of people think, oh, it's innocent and that kind of thing, but is the eroding of a gender, is that a positive thing? I can't see any way that it is.
Well, I think if we pretended there was no difference between the sexes and we came to some sort of equal playing field, then that would be a totally different thing. But yesterday we did an event in Brisbane and a Commonwealth champion weightlifter, an Olympian came, and she trained her whole life. And then she had to compete against Laurel Hubbard. You know, it's just... And
for those who don't know, that's a New Zealand weightlifting, a person who was formerly a man. I believe they have had the op. Is that correct?
I don't know. I think he might be fully intact.
Right.
Like 95% of all men that call themselves women have no intention of removing their penis.
I want to look at this a little bit further. Okay. I want to know where it came from. And I mean, that's, well, geez, there's so many different ways. Do you think, what's your opinion here about this? I have a theory.
Yeah.
I believe the last 50 years, the absolute hard work that's been done through family courts, through the Duluth principles, things like that, I believe that men have been constantly feminized, okay? And maybe this is where it's come from.
It's really funny you say that, because there's a lot of men that almost get it, and then they sort of skirt off into this is somehow it's women's fault that men have watched copious amounts of porn and now want to be women. I don't think it is. I think there's an element of something going on with the changing roles in society.
Sure.
But a lot of it is a backlash. So family courts, for example, if we just take that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of men that moan about the family courts and...
Moan. In this country, 84.1% of fathers, 84.1% of fathers are erased from their children's lives. That's
completely.
Essentially.
No custody.
Essentially, they are taken from their children's lives of any decent consequence. 52% of children who are kept away from their other parent, right, for over 12 months, never have an overnight stay and never have a meaningful relationship with that non-custodial parent ever again. So this is not a minor issue. This is a real issue. And I think to be dismissive of it is
I'm not being dismissive.
Well, your language is a little dismissive.
Okay, well, look, you've got men that the men that I know that moan about not having custody of their children are also men that don't turn up at the weekend, right? So I think we have a fair play of bad behaviour, and also what normally happens in the courts, and what I was going to get to.
Sure.
What actually happens in the courts is they go to the parent who spent most of the time looking after that child, so the primary carer.
Absolutely untrue. I'm sorry, that is not the status quo anymore. That used to be the situation, certainly in Australia. Obviously, I don't know the UK, but I have studied a lot.
From 0 to 5,
sure.
It's 50-50 parenting.
No, fathers are far more included in parts of their child's upbringing now. It's as simple as that.
So who would be the primary carer?
Well, for argument's sake, if we're going to take me as an example, in my life, I was actually the primary carer.
But out of the 84% of men that you were talking about, who would be the primary carer?
That would be a very tough one to say. I would say certainly in the first 5 years, well, I think something's important to state here. I'm not in any way diminishing the value of a woman in any way, shape or form. Quite frankly, women are wonderful. And I think that a child is best with two parents. Obviously, that's not always a possible scenario that we can make happen. But I think that you have to be honest here. Over the last 50 years, certainly in Australia, and it's a big part of the UK too, that men have been pushed out of their children's lives and males have been feminised. Now, what I'm saying to you, is it possible that these kind of actions might lead these men to be attracted to crossing the fence and going to the other side?
No, that's nonsense.
Why is it
toxic masculinity, I think it's a silly thing.
Sure.
Because actually there's always a seesaw arrangement to any of our qualities as human beings, right? So if you want someone to be really strong and you want someone to be able to fight for you, like physically fight if someone breaks into your house, then that person is going to be more likely to engage aggression at some point, right?
Certainly,
physical aggression.
Yep.
So I don't believe in toxic, but if there was such a concept, men dressing as women would be the absolute epitome, ultimate place of toxic masculinity. I just want I am really going to have to return to your point.
Absolutely.
So what I was trying to, what I'm saying is family courts made decisions about women being better mothers than men are fathers, right? And we did that on the basis, if you talk about 50 years, we did that because women were seen as carers. Now, maybe it's not true in the last, in fact, it definitely is true. Women still do the majority of childcare in your nation and mine. And so, but 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, definitely women were even paid less. Most women had part-time jobs, didn't work full-time, and took care of the children full-time. The consequence of that is in family courts, whatever the situation, whatever the evidence, women were probably given custody of children.
Are you familiar with the Duluth principles?
No.
Okay, there's something you really, with the work that you do, if I could recommend something to really look into. The Duluth principles, it was a study that was done about roughly 40 years ago now, okay, and it was a study that all social policies in first world countries, Western countries, I should say, are based on, okay, and they make, and sort of work with me here because I'm actually on your side, believe me. Okay, now the Duluth principles, as I say, this is what our social policies, this is what our governments are putting together, all right, with lobbyists and so forth and all, you know, all the background deals that are done. Right. Duluth principles state that you were born a victim and I was born a predator. Right? Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, as a woman, are you, first and foremost, as a woman, are you offended to be born as a victim?
Well, I don't think I am a victim, so...
And you're not. You're a strong, independent, very intelligent woman. You're not a victim. You certainly weren't born that way, okay? What I'm saying is that this is just, look, it's just me spitballing the ideas here and my thoughts. But, okay, I'm trying to find a reason why there would be this change in society, why so many men would be deciding to be women. There's got to be something now. It could be just as simple as a sick fetish. It really could be. You could be bang on. But I'm looking a little bit deeper into it. I'm trying to find a deep-seated reason why this is going on. Because I can tell you right now, I'm a person who loves his children. I'm a person who was a single dad for a time, raised his kids for many, many years, was the primary carer, okay? I didn't feel that stopped me from being masculine, okay?
Yeah, of course.
I felt it was bloody hard work.
Yeah.
But incredibly rewarding. Okay. But at no time of me changing, one stage I was changing 4 children's nappies at a time. Now, did I ever feel, geez, I feel like a woman. It might be time to frock up or show up and start playing women's sports. Not at any point. I'm thinking that perhaps there are men out there who over the last 50 years had been weakened and put down and put down and put down by society, told that they were born as a negative, toxic thing, and therefore maybe that's why they're going there. I don't think I absolutely thoroughly agree. There is an element out there that it is purely about fetish. I completely agree with you, and they're sick, all right? And we see what they're doing, and these are the people we need to keep away from our children. Full stop. But I'm looking. There's no good trying to solve an issue, okay, if we don't look at all the facts and all the different ways we could get to that result.
I agree with you, and I think young men in particular.
Yep.
So 2 things. Number 1, I probably do agree with you that there's some major impact on men and masculinity for kind of the way that we live at the moment.
Sure.
Are women still born as victims? Are we more likely to suffer abuse at the hands of men and men at the hands of men? Yes, we are. I think we all know it to be true, regardless of whether or not, and I can feel what you might think about this, but regardless of whether or not we think women are incarcerated enough or men are too easily sent to prison or those other things,
Sure.
I think we still know that men are definitely more violent.
I thoroughly agree with you. And I would say that you are right. When it comes to domestic violence, 60%, the current figures show that 60% are women and 40% are men. That's the current figures that are shown. And you're right about custodial sentences. If a man and a woman do the exact same crime, the man will get 7 times the sentence of the woman. So there is a disparity there. Okay, there's no question about that. They are facts and they exist. Okay,
in this country.
In this country, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. The ABS figures. Okay, so essentially, look, I'm very much a big fan of women. Okay, and I certainly I don't want to sit here and be the Kellie-Jay fan club, okay? I want to sit here as 2 intelligent people and maybe look for a resolution, okay? We could just spin our wheels.
Well, I think I've been missold, the whole premise of this interview.
Oh, okay.
I'm joking.
Okay. All right.
I'm joking.
Well, look,
you just said you're not the Kellie-Jay. Sorry. I think I'm very funny.
You are. You've come to the right place. If you're looking for a sarcastic bugger, I think you've come to the right place. In the future, I would certainly love to keep this debate going with you.
Right.
I think that this is the great thing about conversations is you can bring different ideas, okay, and we can come because I'm going to come and I'm going to be wrong about some things. You're going to be wrong about some things, but we put our powers together.
Yeah. Let me just say though, I really do think when it comes to my sons, and I have 3,
sure.
I've got 2 teenagers and a son in his early 20s, and I really do think that in order to be a decent young man and a decent boyfriend, I think it's difficult. It's really difficult to know what are you as a young man.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that's the same as men who are fetishists, because men have always had a propensity to have fetishes more than women. Women rarely have them unless they are sort of part of a couple where that man's fetish then becomes part of the woman's fetish. So I do think that's something totally different, and I don't think it's an answer to what's happening in society, except the pornification. I think men are very entitled who dress as women, which wouldn't go along with how I might feel about feminization of society, right? Sure.
Okay.
But I think it's an ultimate mediocre. A lot of men that do it are in the military. There's a high proportion of men who claim to be women with the fetish route. They come from the military, so that would go along with like hyper masculinity. Sure,
makes sense. Okay. I mean, actually, this probably flows on to a question we've had. We asked our listeners about questions they wanted to speak to you about, and that's one thing: self-identification. Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts about self-identification?
Absolutely, I think the state should back off and have absolutely nothing to do with how somebody feels about themselves.
I completely agree. And I'll tell you right now, you've used the word state, and I thoroughly agree with that. It's time that the state, the government's got out of our bedroom, got out of our house, got out of our lives, got out of our schools. Yeah. As far as the fact of so much of this indoctrination is taking place at schools at the moment, it's absolutely out of control. And it leads on to something else, actually. One of our questions was regarding, has this become a fashion?
I think it has amongst schoolgirls have always fallen victim to social contagion.
Sure.
And this is one of them. And then I think maybe some of the sort of boys who don't fit in, they fall victim to it as well. And for the rest of it, I mean, when we were growing up, and I think you and I are probably about the same age.
Oh, you're much younger.
I don't need you to say that. But when we were younger, we had music. You could belong to like a group of people that like Nirvana, or you could belong to a group of people that love Star Wars, or like just looking at the posters around this room or like I liked Suzanne Vega, so I might, the day she released an album, I might go down and in the queue are other people and there'll be people who are different ages, different belief systems. So you would end up, because of your love of one thing, you would end up having a broad range of people with a broad range of views. These kids have got none of that. They're online. Yes. They're feeling isolated. They're online. They're meeting people online in a way that you converse with just the words you say, as opposed to just now when I made that hilarious joke, your face told me that you didn't get it. Right, you weren't 100% sure straight away that I was joking.
Yeah, absolutely, because we've only met each other a few minutes ago.
So then we had like a look, and then I reassured you. But
Thank you so much for that.
But had I done that online,
there's nothing.
There would have been are you joking? Or you would have just walked away and thought I was awful and
Great point.
whatever.
Great point. I mean, and let's face it, most people are having their relationships online now. And when it comes to children, okay, and they are kids, right?
Yeah.
It's frightening that now a child can't be a child, right? They can't get out there and ride their bike or have sport or whatever. No. Now, you are a brand. You are literally a brand. You're creating a brand of who you portray to the world from such an early age. And that is terrifying. And because of algorithms and that kind of thing, if a child is interested in something that's a little niche, we'll call it, it's forced upon them by the algorithm. And then, of course, at the schools, I mean, we have this problem very much in Australia where the schools are pushing transgenderism, non-binary. They are pushing it and pushing it hard. Really are. And not just the teachers, we're talking about the school counsellors. There's a local school not far from here who's absolutely disgraceful with it.
I mean, any parents listening must absolutely, or watching, must be totally clear. If your kid is on Roblox, you are basically sending them to the park and telling them to go and look at puppies. If your kids are on Discord or on any of these online forums, if you don't have some sort of mirror where you can see everything that they're doing, you really are asking them to shut their eyes and cross the road and hope for the best. Absolutely. It's very dangerous. There was a couple that came to Sydney they've tried the deprogramming because their daughter's 16. And I
was going to ask you about conversion therapy and that, so I'm very interested in your thoughts.
This is to do with so cult deprogramming is what you need to do if your kid starts getting involved in this stuff.
Sure.
And they tried it and they switched off the internet and she ran away. 16.
Really?
And they can actually see what she's looking at now. They've managed to find something with an old password in.
Right.
And they can see what she's talking about on Discord and the sort of men that come and talk to her and take her off into little private chats and so on.
Well, earlier I've said, I don't like the fact that your men are seen as predators. Yeah. But let's be absolutely frank. In that setting, they are 100% predators. They are. Those kind of men are attracted to that space. So, and it's a very frightening thing as parents. We've got to, how do we protect our kids? Well, I'm looking for those answers myself,
Well, without them not being online at all, which I think we all struggle, don't we? We want our kids to fit in, but we also want them to be safe. So you just have to, we just repetitively, we just tell our children, never your real name, never what school you go to, all these things. Do they definitely do it? I have no idea. I don't know.
No. That's exactly right. And you can't be that, that nanny. You can't stand over them and be watching everything they do.
There you go.
Yeah, it's tempting as it is. Look, I'll actually throw in a little personal point from my life is at one stage, my 13-year-old stepdaughter was watching porn in Year 8 Mandarin class, okay? Now, I'm a big believer in when it comes to discipline, okay, find their currency.
Yes.
Now, right. Now, with my daughter, particularly at that age, that iPad, that was the greatest thing in the world, okay? We got her the whiz-bang iPad with bells and whistles. Because that's what the school told us we had to get, by the way, because it's an electronic school, they don't use paper anymore, it's all done on iPad, so we got her the best, right? No problem. So, big problem. She goes to school and that's what she's watching at school. And the only reason I know this is because the school themselves contacted me. They sent me an email and said, she's been watching this. Now, so what I did is I confiscated the iPad.
Yeah.
I did that. Then the school contacted me and told me what a bad parent I was because I was going to affect her learning. And I explained to them, hang on, there's this little thing called pen and paper here. You can use that.
Yeah.
Also, the school told us that they had spare iPads and all that sort of gear. I later found out 2 for the entire school was their spares. Anyway, but they literally came down on me and effectively told me straight outright that I was damaging her education by giving her 2-week ban from an iPad. And then they went on, and then damage control came in with the school and was saying, oh, well, hang on, we've got all the protection. So she couldn't have been watching that anyway because of all the protection of the Wi-Fi. Now, 2 things here. A, you, the school, you're the teacher, actually is the person who told me. Yeah. Sent me the email. So, okay, you're losing a little credibility here. And there's this thing called a hotspot, kids. Okay, now I'm a man in my 50s here. I know how to use a hotspot. I'm sure a 13-year-old girl knows how to use a hotspot. So that is a very real way of a child using and watching that disgusting material at school, being encouraged by other kids, and then effectively being green-lighted by the school, okay, and supported by the school. And it got to the point where I was actually told that effectively I had to give back the iPad to her. So that is the overreach of the school, and that stops my ability to be a parent. And people say, oh, you know, it's the parents' fault, the kids are doing this and doing that. Well, in a lot of cases it is. But good parents, and most of us are great parents, we're out there doing the hard work. And government has stepped into our homes and has taken away our power as parents. Because now...
100%.
Yep. And that's something I really want to see your opinion on this, because they're stepping in. Kids are saying very little, comments, about wanting to play with dolls or whatever the basics are. And it seems to me, and certainly the research is showing, that the schools are really pushing that narrative. What's your experience in that neck of the woods?
I wonder when we did give up our kids to the state. I wonder how long that's been happening. I've sort of started talking recently about Gillick competence, for example, and I wonder if that was one of the first sort of decisions where you take away the kid from the family. And I don't mean in really terrible situations where obviously the state should step in, somebody should step in. But I wonder if a consequence of that is a little bit of a divorce of the children and family. And then, I mean, if the state did something like that, if my kids' school, they were going to bring a lobby group in.
Sure.
And the lobby group's called GIRES, and GIRES is a trans lobby group. Right. And part of their guidance is that if a boy says he's a girl, he's allowed to use a girl's changing room. So I went into school and I said, right, I want to know what you're doing about LGBT, inclusion, diversity, etc. And she said, oh, we're going to get a lobby group in. We're going to get GIRES in. And I just said, oh, do you know what I do? And she said, yes. And I said, good, because this will be easy then. Yep. You're not going to get them in.
Good on you.
And she said, well, and I said, no, you're not going to get them in. Yep. Like, that's just, as far as I'm concerned, the answer is no. So
you've just said an incredibly powerful word that not enough people use. No.
I know.
And all of this stops if we all say no. We as individuals have a lot of power. We say no when it came, we've basically been locked out of our homes for 3 years, all that kind of carry on. And we know what's coming out there. That's certainly something we've been very aware of.
Yeah, but there's no bad consequences for that. So I don't really want to about it.
No, none whatsoever, of course. But, as parents, as individuals, we can say, like Jordan Peterson, no, I'm not going to participate in this, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm a big, you do you, right? If people want to go and wear dresses, knock yourselves out. Do whatever you like, right? But don't expect me to join in with that, your delusion, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's how I see it anyway. And I think that what you're doing is very powerful work. You've got a couple of amazing groups there. And in fact, I'd like you to promote them if you could, because you're doing wonderful work.
So Let Women Speak is the event.
That's one. Yes. Tell me about that.
You you can come along tomorrow at Parliament Steps.
Yep.
In Perth.
You're new here. It's okay. It's okay.
So that's great. And then we've got other spots, and you can find that on standingforwomen.com/events.
Beautiful. Now, and that's the thing. I mean, obviously this video, we're here in Perth, Western Australia, but it goes all over the world. So you'll be doing more and more of these events right across the globe, I assume. You
I think I'm just about to get my Canadian visa revoked.
Okay. Oh, of course.
So,
well, Canada, that great bastion of common sense.
So
what happened to that country? It used to be so polite and lovely. And it's just become
the clues have been there. I mean, Trudeau was allowing the Chinese generals to come and look how he trained the military in Canada. So I think the The clues are there somewhere.
That little Castro look of his, no?
Have you seen the photos? Like
dear.
I always feel like some foil hat, crazy conspiracy theorist. And then in the UK, what they used to do, if you had your baby on your passport, in order to see whether or not it's your baby, they turn the photo up. Oh, I'm so sorry. They turn the photos upside down because then your eyes don't fill in the blanks, right? That's how you can tell if it's the photo. So if you look at a photo of you when you're younger and now, and you turn them upside down, then your face doesn't fill in all the rest, because obviously as humans we fill in the blanks on faces.
Sure.
And if you do Castro and Trudeau, you turn them upside down, they're so similar.
Oh, I know.
It's absolutely, it has to be something. I don't know what.
One of my favourite, you said about the conspiracy theory here, one of my favourite sayings of the last few years is, what is the difference between a fact and a conspiracy theory?
Don't know.
6 months.
Yeah, right.
Simple as that. Hey, we've got ourselves a little audience just out of camera here. Do we have any questions? Anyone who's feeling up to it? I'm looking across. No? I am putting the hard word on you. You might not want to actually make a question here. We'll need to turn that mic on. We've got someone who's stepping up. Fantastic.
Welcome to Perth, first of all.
Thanks.
One thing I'm really curious about, I've got 2 very young daughters, and I've actually pulled them from a school because they wanted drag queens teaching story time.
Jesus.
Yes.
So I didn't give the school an option. I said, no, we're going home, and took them straight out of the school. What do you envision needs to be done to pull the schools back into line to start actually teaching like science, maths, English and all that, rather than going down this transgenderism crap?
Well, I think you have to look at how the teachers are being taught. So in the universities where we used to have teacher training colleges, and it wasn't, you didn't have to go and do a degree. You'd go and do like a special teaching degree.
Okay.
But now we do an extra teaching qualification with a degree. And I think in those universities, the teachers themselves are being groomed, because they're only like 18 or 19 when they start training to be a teacher. So I've always thought, I wonder if the better teachers have always had a little bit of out of school experience. So it's not school, college, uni, school. It's school, college, uni, job, and then come back into school. And then you have some idea of the consequences of your social engineering when it comes to kids. So that's one of the things I think we should do. I think we just have to come down really hard. I don't want kids to do PSHE at school. I don't think it's the job of teachers. Nothing has helped. Like, if you want kids to behave well, have a very rigid rule kind of discipline in school, and make teachers act respectfully to each other and have respect in the school. And much of that is through osmosis. We didn't have circle time where we were like told to be kind and sing Kumbaya.
No.
It was just, if you were a little git in the playground, you got punished.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you just kept
you are
in
sitting
line.
here with a little git.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And
Well,
I
can imagine.
But I think you're absolutely right. I will actually throw into another thing. I think that had this been, if I was a child now, they would have me on every pill known to man, because I was boisterous, I was sporty, I was having lots of fun, I was living life, I'm climbing everything, I'm falling, I'm jumping my bike over the most dangerous things in the world. It was great. Okay?
Have you read Joanne Harris, by the way, who writes for Spiked Online? She's written all about the feminisation of the education system, which made boys like you that want to run, jump, climb trees sit down and be told that you were naughty for wanting to do that in school. Yeah,
well, what you do is you end up doing this, I suppose, if you're a naughty boy.
Well, it worked out quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's such a sad thing that now children have those, boys and girls who have those features about them, personality types. Just drug them up,
Yeah.
right? First thing, shove a pill down their throat. To me, that's blatant child abuse. Now, we've actually got somebody else who stepped up to the mic, so if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, Kellie-Jay.
Hi.
Welcome to Perth.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask you, and because I'm guessing, you've spoken to thousands of people over the years, and to parents and stuff. What happens to the parents who have their children caught up with transgendering and stuff? Can you tell us about some of the experiences that you've heard about?
I think for parents who lose their kids to this, I think it's a profound really difficult grief, because you watch the child that they're not unwell. Well, they might be mentally unwell, but they're not unwell. It's not like they've got, if your child has cancer or something devastating, there's no place at which that you can, on a lonely, horrible, crappy night, feel it's your fault. And I think that there is always that, like, I think it's my fault if my kids don't pack the dishwasher. So if my child did something like really harmful to themselves, I think there is an element of that. I think it's catastrophic. I think families are totally torn apart, because often when it's children and they're dysphoric, I think the narcissism which comes along with that, which is just, they don't care. They need to hate you. I think it's tremendously difficult. I don't know what I would do, but I think it's really important for those parents to find real life support with other people going through it, so you can have a collective kind of support network where you don't feel completely isolated. Because, and siblings as well. It's not, parents, it's terrible. Siblings also get, sometimes these kids are tyrants, absolutely hold their whole family to ransom. And so it's really difficult. And I was on a plane once and I sat next to a woman. I always manage to sit next to someone with a story. And her son had claimed to be numerous things. And the latest one was, he said he was a woman, and he'd been doing that for 3 years. And he was like in his late 20s. And I just said to her, "How are you? Are you okay?" And she said it was the first time that anybody had asked her. Everyone had said, "You're so brave. You're so accepting. Aren't you so wonderful? He's so lucky to have you." But no one had actually said, "How are you?" You can't
and you
even
need
use
that
his
as a human
names.
being.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Horrendous.
This question relates to something else I wanted to talk about with conversion therapy, because we sort of touched on it, but I want to go a little further if I can. Because, look, to me, when you hear conversion therapy, all of a sudden you're thinking about, I don't know, electronic prodding and all sorts of carry on that they used to talk about, electrical shock therapy and that sort of thing back in the day. Now, from what I can see, it's nothing, obviously, it seems like quite a gentle process. But what frightens me is if you, literally in this country, in Victoria and Western Australia is currently looking at these laws at the moment, if you resist your child going into conversion therapy, I've actually got them down in front of me. You are now looking at, get this, if you're a parent and you resist that, you are looking at 10 years in jail and a $200,000 fine. Are you kidding me?
It's just too nuts to be true, even though we both know it's true. But if I wrote a story of a future and I said this is part of it, people would go, "I think you've just gone too far. I think you've just gone too far." I don't know who is benefiting from. Well, I do. Children are being used as human shields so that we don't talk about the fetish.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah. And why are we letting fetishes become mainstream? What's going on here?
Because most people don't want to admit it, because it's icky, right? It's gross.
But it's a small part of society who are thinking this way. Why are we letting such a small part of society rule the majority? It makes no sense. Like if we were any other animal, so to speak, right? The weak are cut off by the herd, all right? The strong survive. Why are we allowing the weak? And I'm sorry, but that's the reality here, okay? These people, if you're a man and you're pretending to be a woman, you are weak, all right? Yeah. And now, if you should not have a say on how I live my life, how you live your life, how you live your life, how you live your life. No, absolutely not. And we are going through this change in the last, basically since, I would say accelerated since 2015, 2016, up until now, where those who, the survival of the fittest has worked the opposite way. We're giving too much power to those who shouldn't have it.
Well, I think we're in a very funny time, aren't we? We're luxurious, where we live. There's very little too precarious about our lives as a collective, as society. And I think this is the consequence of it. We don't have collective. I'm a gold star atheist. I've never believed in Got
Sure.
to stop doing that. Got to stop touching. I'm so sorry.
Quite right, no problem.
I'm a gold star atheist, which means I've never believed in God.
Right.
Not even for a second as a kid. But I did grow up in a culturally Christian society.
Sure.
And now we have a complete recession of collective belief and purpose. Mm-hmm. So I think that's got something to do with it. Sorry, was that something about Christianity?
Oh, look,
Didn't
exactly.
like it.
The computer is clearly Catholic. I don't know.
But I think it's very scary that we're letting this happen. But there are many themes and people that benefit from it. Big pharma benefit.
Yes.
People who want to distract you from really what's going on, which might be global economic kind of downturn. So it's globalist agendas are being pushed because it's textbook what's happening in every country with regard to this.
For sure.
And then we had the paedophile information exchange in the 70s and 80s. And those men, I think some of them have just rebranded, because who benefits from children taking puberty blockers and ending up like infants for their whole lives? Paedophiles.
Absolutely.
Who benefits from the erosion of family, from separating? You can separate men off first, right? Because men are the protectors of their family. And then you separate the women off because women protect their children.
Sure.
And then you're just left with kids.
Yep. Absolutely. And by eroding the family, simple as that, you're taking the power away, and you are literally leaving those children exposed, and those predators can do what they like.
I mean, I'm gonna force you into a debate maybe later on in the year.
Yeah.
Because I'm really intrigued about your ideas about the feminization of society, and I really want to explore that fully, because I think you're right that there is one, but I think you're wrong about some of the consequences of it.
Sure.
But
I can concede you're wrong. It's okay.
I'm really desperate to have the conversation, because I want to really get to the meat and bones of it, because often we don't, because everyone sort of comes in a little bit and then they skirt back out because nobody wants to fall out. But I fully want to Barney about it.
Yeah.
So we can totally get to it. I've met lots of men like you who think transgenderism is. I don't think transgenderism is the fault of it, but there are consequences.
No. I'm wondering if it has contributed. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I do wonder if I'm trying to find the cause, right? Full stop. I'm not going to lie. I'm against what's going on. Okay, we've got somebody up there for the question. Yes, quickly. Sorry.
As the host of You Can't Say That, I have to invite you every Monday at 5 o'clock WA time. We have a show where everything's on the table. So I would love to have you as a Zoom guest on it, so we can really punch it out. I mean, talk it out and find solutions to these world problems.
Now, absolutely. Now, something you've just said, and I absolutely adore you for it, quite frankly, because something we do here, Edge Radio Australia exists because we have 100% belief in freedom of speech.
Right,
Simple as that.
good.
Okay, that's why we exist. So I want to argue with you, and you know why? Because if we don't argue, we don't discuss, we don't debate, we'll never get to the answers. I'll sit here and think I'm right. You'll sit there and think you're right. And guess what? Nothing gets achieved.
No.
Discourse is so important. What we're doing, and the fact is, yes, you've welcomed it. You can't say that. So that's, every Monday, be part of it.
Aaron, one more thing. Neither of you's right. I'm always right.
Oh, dear. Okay, there we go. There's always one. But it's so important. And I actually want to... I love the fact that we've butted heads on a couple of things. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic, because I think you're a wonderful human being who's doing wonderful work, and I really want to compliment you for it, because so many people wave their arms around, make some noise, or complain about quietly, okay? But getting off your butt and making change happen, only a few of society do that, and you need to be very strongly commended for that. So,
Well, thanks very much.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say this as well. Ultimately, what would you like to achieve?
Ultimately, I want the state out of it. That's what I want. Ultimately, I think it's preposterous that there are legal fictions in my country and your country. I think it's ridiculous there's men and women's sports. I think if we take the state out of it, other people will follow suit. The reason there's men in sports, women's sports, is because people are too
Yes.
They've got no courage at all, and so they'd rather just go along with it because they can just annoy women. Like, the taxi driver on the way over was Iranian.
Okay.
And he was talking every time I talk to someone from Iran, I say women's rights, and then they talk about the protests in Iran, and he was talking about that, and I just said to him, don't you think it's interesting that when George Floyd was murdered by a police officer, and he wasn't necessarily an innocent, wonderful human being, but what happened to him was wrong. We had like global riots, global marches for that man.
That's right.
When those women were executed in Iran, and even when you've seen women in Iran being beheaded in the street, and then mass executions for people that stuck up for them, where were the marches?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, it wasn't popular that week, okay?
Well, I think it's because it's women. I think the only reason every civil rights, aside from women's rights as a unique thing, but every single civil rights movement that's had success has so because in lesbian and gay rights, you've got gay men. In black rights, you've got black men. And I just think in Iran, what's happening is happening to women. Therefore, it doesn't matter so much what's happening to Afghanistan with women, and in the Yemen and in Saudi Arabia and all of these countries. We're just fine with it, I think, because it's women.
I 1,000% disagree. And I think that what we're seeing here is the difference between the Western world and the East, right? And what we see in the Western world is they think that they can fix that by virtue signaling, by putting a special ring on your Facebook page, or by buying a cruelty-free, cup of coffee, or whatever the case may be, or, there's always virtue signaling coming from the West. I think that, quite frankly, yes, the East there is so many countries that are very, very, very poor to women, and that needs to be addressed. And it is up to us. It is our responsibility to hold that up and hold a flag up to that. Absolutely. But we live in the Western world, and maybe we need to clean up our own backyard first.
Well, I agree, but in domestic violence in every country, in the progressive kind of in the West,
Sure.
Women are killed weekly in their own homes.
Sure.
It's not even really on the agenda that much.
In this country, it's on every agenda.
Is it stopped?
Oh, no. Okay, so in Australia, we have a national sort of a figure that's thrown around is effectively they say one woman a week is killed by an intimate partner. Okay, it actually works out about every 10 days. I don't care, whatever the figure is, it's too much.
Yes.
Right? It's wrong, full
Yes.
stop. But it's actually in this country very much artificially put up, okay, and they fiddled the numbers. That's the reality.
So is it talked about but not dealt with then? Because
it's talked about everywhere. But you know what's not talked about? 49 men every single week in Australia committing suicide. 76% of men are suicide victims. 41 fathers per week. 41 fathers per week in this country commit suicide because they've kept from their children. Okay, we don't talk about that. So 41 a week, yeah. It's absolutely horrific. So by no means am I saying any less of the woman that's murdered by an intimate partner, because it's disgraceful. But there are two things to tell the truth about. The truth is they use the Indigenous figures to bump up the numbers. It's very creatively done, okay? And that's just wrong, full stop. You know what they should do? They should be addressing the issue in the Indigenous areas. That's what they should do, be saving women's lives. But they're not, because they would rather use it to create the funding for the lobbyists and all that sort of thing.
So let me ask about suicide, because what we know about suicide is if men want to take their own lives, they do it more violently, so they're more successful.
That's right.
So what is the rate of women attempting and men attempt and successful?
Sure.
And we know that someone taking like 3 paracetamol is not really attempting to take their own lives. But what are the do you know the comparative figures?
Comparison figures, no, I haven't got them at hand, but I do know that literally it's 76% of suicides in this country are male. Okay, that's a reality.
And is it about 45 to 60 is the age range that's the worst for men? Yeah,
look, because that's all. Unfortunately, it's the fathers. Fathers in this country commit suicide. That is the golden age, unfortunately, of suicide in this country. Dads, because they're kept from their kids. It's just a reality. 41 of the 49 men that kill themselves every single week in this country it's related somehow to that. And here's the thing, and this is what, again, why this conversation is so important. I come into this as somebody who's very much about equality, and I've been obviously involved in the space for protecting men in these horrible situations. But I think we just need equality here. What we need to do is remember that men and women need each other. I need to support you as a woman. You need to support me as a man. What's happened with government has been this, we must separate them. And that's divide and conquer, whether you're black and white, whether it's gay or straight, whether it's man or woman, whether it's this or that. Okay?
Well, I've sort of talked about staying together before, and people are like, people shouldn't stay in unhappy marriages. I'm like, no. Work your ass off and make it happy.
Yes,
that's what you do.
Exactly.
Don't say miserable, but just make each. If I spend my life trying to make my husband happy, and he spends his life trying to make me happy, then we're both happy.
Yeah. Wow. What a horrible situation to live in. We've got a question up there.
Is it on?
Yep.
Just wanting to ask you about the cancellation of women worldwide, and so many women have to pretend to go along with this rouge, or have to stay silent or hide behind things because they're scared of losing their jobs or their profession or their livelihood or their social circle. Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day, about why women do it. So there's a couple of types of women. There's three. There's women that basically say no, come hell or high water. And those women might not necessarily be responsible for paying for their mortgage. Then there's women that are coerced into silence because otherwise there'll either be social consequences, familial consequences, or work consequences, or even like not being able to go to your favourite bar because there's somebody there who identifies or has a family member who identifies as something else, and then you're no longer welcome into the places that you frequented for the last 10 years. And then there's the other woman who practically champions it. And I was trying to work out the other night what it is and why women are so dreadful to each other, which we are.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think it's because we can read faces better.
Right.
So I've come up with this idea. It's one of many. And I've gone through many sort of incarnations of what I think. But men don't pick up on microaggressions, tone. They're far less likely to be affronted and offended by somebody making them feel a little bit silly.
Completely agree.
And so women then can be quite vicious in response.
Absolutely.
Or like huffy or whatever. Whereas a lot of men don't even notice. If I remember my husband saying something about someone at work, and we worked together, and this guy had always been a bit of an idiot to my husband, and my husband had never noticed. And then one day he was like, oh, I think such and such was like just a bit dismissive and a bit disrespectful. And I was like, yeah, for like 2 years. So I think that's what it is. But women being cancelled for not being able to say what we are, or saying I feel afraid or uncomfortable with that situation and being ignored, I think it's really it's just quite devastating. And this is another reason why I want to have the conversation about feminization of society and all this sort of stuff, because actually when it comes to certain sorts of consequences, we bear the brunt of this particular ideology. Women bear the brunt of it. And so there's someone that's gaining from all this, and it's not us.
No, it's not us.
So I don't know whether it's just chaos. I listened to a really good conversation with Steve Bannon and Tim Pool.
Okay, excellent.
And he talks about the information war. And if I think we suddenly find that China and Russia, or just China actually, was playing a little, or some oligarchs were playing a little game of Risk.
Sure.
With like, let's move that culture a little bit mad this and let's do this. I wouldn't be surprised. It's just, none of it makes sense.
And this is, again, like, it makes no sense. Why are we conflicted here? Like, as far as why men and women are best when they're working together. And this is just, it is so sad to see what's going on here. And truly, the people, okay, I'll put on the feminist hat for a minute, but women are the ones losing out of this. They are, okay? Where, because of the feminising of men, quite frankly, women are not finding a man. Okay, and I know not every woman needs a man, but
Do you think that's a feminizing of men?
yeah, absolutely.
Or do you think that is... Do you think that is the unrealistic expectation of women of men?
I call it, I have a name for this. You are spot on. It's called Oprah Onyx, I call it. And it's what happened is...
She never had kids, though. So
No.
know.
Exactly. She was amazing. She was able to give great advice on things she knew nothing about. Like talking about poverty as a multi-billionaire. But I remember the days of Oprah getting on air. And she would basically say, and excuse me being a little vulgar here, but effectively, if you can't find a man who is earning, big dollars, got a 12-inch package, okay? It's got a square jaw and this and that, and the nice car and whatever. Because girl, you're worth it. You deserve it. Now, I think that she gave a whole generation of women a completely unrealistic expectation of what is, quite frankly, about 2% of men, maybe less. Okay. And unfortunately, I do believe, like, I've got so many female friends who are in their 40s now who are struggling and cannot find a man because, okay, they spent a lot of their lives looking for this guy with the package
Everything.
deal, right? And it didn't come their way. And now they find, okay, that quite frankly, those men have moved on. Okay. And
Well, they've all found someone else and had kids.
spot on, absolutely. And it's really sad. And I see that, some really wonderful people who have now, quite frankly, quite sad lives and they're really reaching out.
Also, I think we also rush into relationships. We expect them to be like full on, really quick. I just think trust your instincts, right?
Yeah,
if you really fancy the pants off someone and they make you feel nice and they speak to you respectfully, then everything else can grow from that.
Yeah.
I find it quite interesting because also women are told that we can have everything, and that's just not true.
Thank
Because
you
if
so much for saying that.
Well, if you want to raise a child that feels nurtured, I do kind of think we need to be some sort of societal setup where we can stay at home with our kids a little bit more. I stayed at home with mine, full stop, and that's a choice that I made and I was able to make.
You're very lucky.
I'm really, really lucky, and I loved it, and I didn't find it boring, and I'm not stupid. But I couldn't do that, and then after, even if it was 5 years, I was really successful at my job.
Yep.
I couldn't have returned to that.
No.
Because it wasn't even that important anymore.
That's it. Your priorities change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can certainly say my own life. Exactly that. You had great success in doing this and that, whatever. My children became the greatest gift. And also just nothing in my life brought me. You okay there? We'll get you there. Go for some water there. But nothing in life brought me as much happiness as my children. Full stop. We've got another question from up top.
Thank you. What about detransitioners? Are you doing anything on your campaigning about detransitioners and their voices?
No. They are always welcome to come and talk. Always welcome to come and talk. But I think in order to deal with detransitioners, you have to be qualified, and everybody is welcome to come and speak at the events or phone in. I do something called Turf Talk Tuesday on my channel. Okay. So everyone's welcome. And my message is for them, but my message really is more for the parents telling them and warning them about it.
Sure.
And warning society rather than bringing detransitioners back in from the cold. But I just think if you speak truthfully, that's a benefit to those people anyway.
Absolutely.
And there's been some really quite, like Kira Bell, the big case in the UK, and also Kat in the US. Both of them attribute like part of their detransitioning to like my campaign.
Sure.
Because somebody eventually just said, no,
No.
you're never going to be a boy.
Yeah. And that's how we fix this. We put our hand up and we say, stop. We say no. And if we all do it, it does go away. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think that's the fundamental that we should take away from this. I really do. I think, as I say, what you're doing is very, very powerful, very important. And it is important for women to have a voice because everybody has the right to free speech.
Yeah.
And something that's disappearing so much right across the world. So, no, as I say, I think it's a massively important thing. I think if we can stop this, I think that so much of it has got to do with grooming, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Child abuse. And if you're like me and you're very clearly, very passionate and love your children, this is about stopping child abuse, okay? And that's what this transitioning of children is. I'm sure there's people out there who feel they were born in the wrong body and all that kind of thing. Well, you know what? Let's let them become adults before they make decisions, okay?
And it's it might be men online grooming kids into it,
Sure.
but it's mothers.
Oh,
It's
horrible.
mothers who are transitioning their little kids.
I'm seeing that, absolutely.
Munchausens or Transhausens
Right.
by proxy.
Wow.
So they are really, they gain some sort of accolade and credibility for having a trans kid.
You win lots of virtue points.
So bad.
It is absolutely disgraceful. I think that I think we've pretty well got everything we need to do. Are there any more questions from out the back? I really appreciate from our audience here the questions coming forward. A couple of you had a few questions. Geez, get right in there. I really want to thank you very much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you ever want someone to argue with, just give me a call.
Oh, that'd be great.
I think this is so important. I think that fundamentally, we've got all these people out there who are saying how much they hate you. They've called you a Nazi or this or that. And I always find the moment they go, if they call you a Nazi or an ism, any ism, as far as I'm concerned, the argument's pretty well over because it shows that they're very weak of thought and they don't have something constructive to bring to the party.
And they've got no sense of humour.
None.
I was at Hyde Park where I do my monthly things in London.
Right.
And we go to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. And they were going... Posey Parker's so another name that I'm used to be known by is Posey Parker. They go, Posey Parker's a fascist. And so I said to camera, I think fascist is another word for legend. And then they were going, see, she thinks she's a legend because she's a fascist. I was like, you just missed the joke. It was a good joke. Come on.
I think it's moments like that. You've got to remember this fundamental of life. Sometimes you just can't fix stupid.
No, that's true.
No, you can't. Okay, and with that, I think we'll call it a show. Thank you very much, Kelly. As I say, been an absolute pleasure having you, Kellie-Jay. And I look forward to talking with you again and again and again.
Sounds
because
good.
I think that, you've got some wonderful positive things to do. And I think all those people who want to bring negativity to your life, well, quite frankly, I think they need to have a good look at themselves because clearly they've got their own issues. Yeah, you are bringing a positive message, a message of empowerment to women, to children, and I think we should focus on that.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. This is Edge Radio Australia. It's been a very special and a little bit long episode of You Can't Say That. We do it every week, and we talk about the issues that people, used to talk about, the old water cooler rather, and now they get fired for. So you're very welcome to be part of that. Thank you very much. Edge Radio Australia.